Senator Moreno.
Well, thank you for being here. And I may say something that's never probably been said ever in the United States of America, which is I think there's common ground between Ohio and Michigan on this topic. So I thank you for your willingness to help on this.
Gotten over that football game in November, have you?
Can we strike that from the record? Is that possible to do that? When is Michigan playing on Monday? Oh, they're not. All right. So just want to point that out. All righty. we can agree on the lines. So, look, for me, this is a very, very personal conversation because I'm the one person probably here on the panel and testifying that would not literally be here if it wasn't for a legal immigration system to this country. Wasn't born here, was born in Colombia. This country welcomed me and my family. This issue does not have to be difficult. We've made it very, very difficult. And I can tell you, after campaigning 2,000 miles a week to every corner of the state of Ohio, I hear voters, and I'm sure my colleagues do too, say, why can't you fix this? This is not intellectually complicated. It really isn't. So I would start with a simple premise I'd ask the three of you to answer. Should we have an immigration system that benefits the United States of America as the #1 criteria for any legal immigration? Yes or no?
That absolutely should be the priority. Immigration for America is for the benefit of America, first and foremost. It is true that the immigrants benefit, but that is a secondary benefit to the focus of a nation. And we have to take care of ourselves first, and we haven't done that for decades.
U.S. citizenship is probably the most precious status in the world, and we should treat it accordingly, and we should use it to the benefit of all the American people.
Absolutely, and I've heard some points of agreement in this room today, which actually surprised me.
Yeah, and I think that's how we can move forward on this. And to Senator Paul's point, I don't think we have to boil the ocean all at once. I think we can agree that, for example, if we're talking about the hyper-specific legal status of asylum, that we can remember what it means. So I'd ask each of you to define to me what it means to be a refugee seeking asylum. What is, for the people who may not be into this topic every single day, what does that mean to be a refugee seeking asylum?
Well, to put it in street terms, it's someone who is, it's easy to use countries as an example. Cuba, who's persecuted for their political views by a communist regime. And I actually think if you think of it in terms of persecution by the government, and only the government, then you can start to simplify this. For example, in the Western Hemisphere, there's probably not a good reason for any other countries other than Venezuela and Cuba to ever have any asylees, period. And so if you can't be an asylee from any of the other countries because it's not the 1980s in Central America or Colombia, for example, any longer, then you can streamline rather dramatically the Western Hemisphere piece of that equation.
And do you to follow up on that, is there a scenario in which there are actual refugees from Mexico? In other words, would you classify Mexico as even in the realm of possibility of having actual refugees, people being persecuted for their race, nationality, or religion from Mexico?
No, and the Mexico is, as noted, the 10th largest country in the world population-wise, and it is the belief of the U.S. government has been for a long time that if an individual who's a Mexican citizen is being persecuted somewhere in Mexico, they can go elsewhere in Mexico. And that is their solution, which is why the caveat of persecution by the government is so important to qualify as an asylee. Refugees can be different. They can be, people who are displaced by war, for example. We are one of the few countries that uses those two terms somewhat differently, asylee and refugee.
So persecution is defined, you're eligible for asylum if you show past persecution or well-founded fear of future persecution on account of your race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. I took Mr. Isaacson's line. But it's also important, as Mr. Cuccinelli mentioned, that persecution has to be either inflicted by the government or a group that the government cannot or will not control. When I was a judge, I heard asylum claims from Ireland, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia. So, yeah, I mean, there are definitely safe places in this world, and we probably need to work harder diplomatically to make those places safer so that people can return to them.
There are a lot of asylum claims in the U.S. Immigration Court for Mexican citizens. They do have a relatively low approval rating or grant rate, but it's not zero. Basically, the argument is usually the Mexican government cannot or will not protect them from organized crime or from whoever is discriminating against them.
So would it be reasonable not to allow asylum seekers to cross through a non-designated port of entry? Would that be reasonable, something that we can all agree on?
You mean, would it be reasonable to not accept asylum requests from people not coming through a legal port of entry?
Correct.
That would be eminently reasonable. It's unreasonable not to implement that sort of vetting.
You would agree, Mr. Isaacson?
That's the current rule in place right now, and it does hurt some vulnerable people. There still has to be a process.
Okay.
And the best part about it, Senator Moreno, very briefly, when we talked about the money paid to the cartels charge a peso to cross their territory and to help you get across the border illegally. If you come through the port, you take that money out of the cartel's pocket.
One follow-on to Senator Moreno's question. He mentioned having a definition and having it be